We were close in proximity, but not like relationally. The bond was not really there. That is Joy Anna Duggar Forsyth. She is talking about her own sister, not a distant cousin, not a family friend she lost touch with, her sister, the woman she shared a roof with for 18 years, the woman she ate breakfast next to every single morning of her childhood. And she is sitting there on a podcast on July 29th, 2026, saying they basically did not know each other. This happened on the Jinger and Jeremy podcast. Joy Anna appeared as a guest on her older sister Jinger's show, and what should have been a casual conversation between two siblings catching up turned into something nobody expected. Two grown women, both mothers, both in their late 20s and early 30s, admitting on microphone that they grew up as strangers under the same roof. Jinger did not flinch. She did not try to soften it. She agreed. And then she said something that should make you stop and rethink everything you thought you knew about that family in Tontitown, Arkansas. She said the family was segregated by sections: older kids, middle kids, younger kids, 3 tiers, 3 separate groups, 1 house, and 0 overlap between them. Now sit with that for a second. You watched the show, you saw 19 kids lined up in birth order, all wearing matching outfits, all smiling for the camera, and the whole time, the older kids were living in one world, the middle kids were in another, and the youngest were somewhere else entirely. They were not a family, they were an assembly line, and the product was the image of a family. Jinger said she was in the older section, one of the 6 oldest, and Joy Anna was one of the little kids, sandwiched between boys, 4 years apart in age. But in a family that size, with that system, 4 years might as well be 40, because the system did not let them cross over. The system kept them sorted. The system kept them apart. And here is where this stops being just a Duggar story and starts being a story about what happens when parents build a household that runs like a factory instead of a home. Kids get categorized, kids get assigned roles, kids get sorted into batches, and the relationships that should form naturally, the bonds between brothers and sisters, the kind of bonds where you know each other's fears and dreams and secrets, those bonds never get the chance to grow because the structure does not allow it. You know what this feels like if you grew up in a big family. Or maybe your family was not that big, but it still managed to make you feel like you were living next to your siblings instead of with them. Maybe your parents split you up by gender. The boys did this, the girls did that. Maybe by age, the big kids went here, the little kids went there. Maybe by personality. This one is the smart one, this one is the difficult one, this one is the quiet one. And years later, you sit across from your brother or sister at a holiday dinner and you realize something uncomfortable. You know their name, you know their face, you do not know their story. That is what Joy Anna just confirmed. And she said it without anger, without bitterness, without any trace of trying to make her parents look bad. She said it like she was describing the weather. The bond was not really there, just a quiet fact, just the way things were. But it was not just the way things were. It was the way things were designed to be. Because when you run a household with 19 children, you do not have time for individual relationships. You do not have the bandwidth to sit with each child and learn who they are. You have time for systems, systems for meals, systems for laundry, systems for schooling, systems for who sleeps where and who sits with whom and who is responsible for whom. And the system Jinger just described, the age-tiered segregation, that is not something that happened by accident. It is a feature of the fundamentalist framework they were raised in. It shows up in institute in basic life principles households across the country. It is how you manage a quiverful family. You do not parent 19 kids, you systematize them. The older kids raise the middle kids raise the younger kids, and nobody raises anybody the way a parent should. The older kids get parentified. They become mini adults before they hit puberty. They are changing diapers and making meals and supervising toddlers while they are still children themselves. The middle kids get lost in the shuffle. They are not old enough to be given authority and not young enough to be babied. So they drift, they become invisible, and the younger kids get raised by children, not by parents, by siblings who are still figuring out their own lives. And when they all grow up and leave that house, they look at each other and they say what Joy Anna said. We were close in proximity, but not relationally. Because proximity is geography, relational is connection. And you can sleep 3 feet from someone for 18 years and never actually reach them. Jinger tried to offer some context. She talked about personality differences. She mentioned that Joy Anna was a tomboy who refused to wear nice clothes, who would fight every single time someone tried to get her out of a dirty t-shirt she had been wearing for 3 days. And the older girls were into shopping and dresses and girly things. So sure, personalities played a role, different interests played a role. But personalities do not create a complete absence of bond between sisters who share a bathroom and a bedroom and a dinner table. Systems do that. Structures do that. A house that sorts kids into tiers and never lets the tiers mix, that does that. And here's what nobody's talking about. Joyanna said something else in that podcast that flew under the radar. She said that out of all her sisters, Jinger is the one she talks to the most now. But they live across the country from each other. Jinger is in California, Joyanna is still in Arkansas. They talk on the phone with no pressure. And when they do, Joyanna said, it is like there has been no time between conversations. Read that again. The closest relationship these two sisters have ever had is happening right now, over the phone, across a continent. After they both left the house they grew up in, they could not build a bond in the same building, but they built one from 1,000 miles apart. That tells you everything you need to know about what that house actually was. It was not a home, it was a set, a production facility for a television show and a lifestyle brand and a political career. And the kids were the product. They were the evidence that the system worked. Look at all these smiling children. Look at this happy family. Look at what God has blessed us with. And behind the camera, the kids did not know each other. They knew their tier, they knew their section, they knew their assignment, but they did not know their siblings. Think about what Jinger almost said. In the podcast, she started a sentence. She said, "You are not like you are really," and then she stopped. She pivoted. She moved on to something else. What was she about to say? "You are not like you are really my sister. You are not like you are really part of my childhood. You are not like you are really that much younger than me. We will never know." But the fact that she stopped mid-sentence tells you the feeling was bigger than the words she had for it. There was something she wanted to say and could not, or would not, or was not ready to. And if you are an adult watching this, you know that feeling. You know what it is like to look at a sibling and realize the person standing in front of you is someone you should know deeply, but do not. You grew up in the same house. You shared parents. You shared meals. You shared a last name. You shared a bedroom wall. And yet there is a wall there that neither of you built. Your parents built it. The system built it. The way the family was structured built it. And you have been living with that wall so long, you forgot it was there until someone like Joyanna says it out loud, and you feel it in your chest. Now apply that to the Duggar family and everything that went wrong. If the siblings did not know each other, they could not protect each other. If the older kids were in one world and the younger kids were in another, nobody was watching what happened in the gaps between the tiers. And we all know what happened in the gaps. Josh happened, the oldest son, the one who was supposed to be in the older kids tier, the one who had access to the younger tiers because the system placed him above them and nobody was checking what he did with that access. When Joyanna says the bond was not really there, she is not just talking about emotional distance. She is describing a structural vulnerability. A family where siblings are strangers is a family where things can happen in the dark. Because nobody is paying attention to the kids who are not in their tier. Nobody is checking on the little kids because that is the middle kids' job. And the middle kids are not checking because that is the older kids' job. And the older kids are busy being parentified and resentful and exhausted from raising children when they are still children themselves. It is a chain with broken links. And every link thinks the next one is holding, until the chain drops and nobody catches the child at the bottom. The Duggars built a brand on family, on togetherness, on the idea that more kids means more love and more blessing and more joy. And now 2 of those kids are sitting on a podcast telling you that the brand was a lie. Not because they are angry, not because they are trying to destroy their parents, but because they are adults now and they are looking back at their childhood with clear eyes, and what they see is a house full of strangers who shared a last name and a television contract. Joyanna is 28, Jinger is 32. They are both mothers now. They both have 3 children, and you can hear it in their voices. They are trying to do it differently. They are trying to actually know their kids, not manage them, not sort them into tiers, not assign them to batches, know them, see them, hear them. But to do that, they first had to admit what happened to them. And that admission, the bond was not really there, is the kind of thing that sounds small until you sit with it. Because if the Duggar sisters are saying this, there are thousands of women across America who grew up in similar households. Maybe not as large, maybe not as famous, maybe not on television, but just as segregated, just as systematized, just as broken in the same quiet way. And they are hearing Joy-Anna's words and feeling them in their bones. You grew up in a house where you knew everyone's name but no one's story. You sat at a dinner table every night with people you could not talk to. You shared a bedroom with sisters you could not confide in. You shared a life with siblings you could not reach. And when you finally left, you realized the distance was not geography. It was architecture. The house was built to keep you apart. And you have been living with the consequences of that architecture your whole life. That is what Joy-Anna just said. Not in those exact words, but in the words she chose, proximity, but not relational. She described something that millions of people recognize, and she did it on her sister's podcast, which means she did it with her sister sitting right there, nodding along. Two women who finally found each other, 20 years too late, in a different state, over a phone line, because the house they grew up in never let them find each other in person. That is not a Duggar story. That is an American family story. And it is happening in more houses than anyone wants to admit. The question is whether anyone is listening.